Hey y'all,
How's it going, everyone?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris the Bird Nerd.
and we
We are
are the
the Bird
Bird Brain.
Brains.
All right, back at it.
Yeah. Another late night for us.
Another late night after a long day, but we're here doing what we love. And I was talking to my wife today. I had a long drive, and I said, she's like, "Aren't you going to be so tired?" I did like 12 hours of driving today, and I was like, "Yeah, I am, but I'd rather do this than about anything else." So if I could just get,
Yep.
Animal Planet or somebody to pay us to do this,
Yeah.
I'd be in good shape.
They need to follow us in the life of birds. Pretty much any adventure that I go on has birds in it. We went to Yellowstone a couple weeks back with my brothers and my dad, and there's a lady up there in Montana that I trade birds with. At my work, we do like a every week we meet with like all of the leaders in the hospital, and we do like a vacation pics moment. And they always laugh because every time that I share vacation pics, the very last slide has the birds that I either traded or bought on whatever trip that I went to. And so they laugh because they're just waiting for that last slide to be like, okay, how much money did you drop on birds this time? Which ones did you trade? How many did you bring back? And they always are like, your poor wife. She always has to have birds involved in everything you do and everywhere you go. But we could make a pretty interesting documentary. So Animal Planet, if you're listening, or Discovery Channel, maybe something to check out.
Hit us up. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm constantly doing bird transactions of one kind or another, or talking to somebody about birds, or giving advice. And it's so funny. So many. I say this all the time on this podcast, I know, but so many people are like, "Thank you so much." Like, sorry, I'm bothering you. And
Yeah,
then every time I'm like, "No, you're not like, bird questions, bring them on."
yeah.
But people must just like not be as crazy about birds as we are, and don't even people who have them are like, they can't possibly want to talk about my sick zebra finch for 4 days in a row. I do
Yep,
want to.
yep. We very much good.
Yeah, I mean, my wife, not as much of a bird person as me, but she she steers into the skid a little bit. There's little bird decorations all over the house. So
We've a lot of our Christmas decorations, like for our tree and around the walls, are like owls, or like snow owls,
mhm.
and like red cardinals and things like that. So we've definitely taken the bird theme into a lot of the Christmas decorations, which I love. So
That's a great idea. I should start asking for that stuff. I didn't even
yeah,
think about that. That's a great
just like
idea.
it's like a slow transition. So, and now we're to the point
Speaking
where you just can't turn back. So
speaking of owls, so I've been having a mouse problem in the aviary. I think I've talked about it some. So I put out some uh, mouse traps around the outside of the aviary, not where the birds are for obvious reasons, but around the outside. And um, the other day I found a mouse trap, but all I found, and I don't want to sound too graphic here, but I'll just say all I found was pieces of a mouse, and I couldn't figure out. I assumed like a raccoon or something ate it. Well, on my camera last night, guess what I saw?
oh, you got an owl, huh?
Yeah, but didn't bother. This is a different owl than the other owl. It's smaller. It's a smaller species, I think. Didn't
Like a
even,
small barn owl or something.
yeah, I mean, you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
didn't bother the aviary at all, but it came and ate a mouse out of the mousetrap on camera. I just realized I just deleted the clip tonight, and I should have saved it. But so
Yeah.
I looked at it, and at first I was like, "Ah, should I be doing something about it?" And then it literally ignored the aviary. And so I was like, "Yeah, I mean, frankly, I don't mind having a small mouse that doesn't bother, or a small owl that doesn't bother my birds, helping me with the pest control. I think I like this owl."
I was
So
gonna say
the other owl was huge, but
if only you could strike up a deal. We need like Dr. Doolittle to come speak to these animals and be like, hey, like you are more than welcome to come to my property. Just eat the rats and snakes and mice, and don't touch my aviary. And
right, yeah. These
so
are off limits. Green light on this side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so some if there's any owl or hawk whispers on the video here, so reach out to us, let us know how we can better train our predators to leave
I
our
thought you were
birds
going to
alone,
say
but
if
take care of
there.
everyone else.
I thought you were going to say if there are any owls or hawks watching.
Yeah, or that too.
Yeah, yeah. If you're an owl
View through
and
the
you're
windows.
watching our podcast, we'd like to make a deal. Let's make a deal. I'll be less worried though, because we're getting into winter, right? I'm starting to pull nest boxes. I think you've pulled all of yours or most of yours, right?
All of my aviary nest boxes except for
Mhm.
one that has some chicks in there, I've pulled. Yep.
And so maybe we'll start there, but first we'll say what we're talking about. Today we're going to talk about getting birds out of breeding condition, which is, we've talked a lot, and I've countless people I've talked to in the last couple of weeks about getting birds into breeding condition and how important
Yeah.
that is. Now we're going to talk about how to undo that and the
Which
rest of
is
the cycle.
which is equally as important.
Absolutely.
The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains.
All right. Before we do that, we got to talk about our sponsor. So we're getting close
Yes.
uh,
Some exciting
to
stuff coming down the
some
line.
very exciting stuff. So we are sponsored by New Zealand. They are an awesome pet food company over in Arizona because we don't have enough time zones already for the podcast, so we decided to make it more complicated.
Yeah,
And
imagine aligning all three of our time zones up for
well, and I'll
meetings. It's
say,
it's
and then
quite fun. All
we have
four of
help.
us. We've got four
Yeah,
time zones.
because
Yeah.
we have our friend Robin who helps too with the whole project, and she's in Maine, and she has the leather elves, by the way. Which, if you're we'll give her a
Yeah.
little extra bonus shout out. If you're a big bird person, she has awesome like handcrafted bird toys. I've been on
Yes,
her
very
live
cool.
stream before. We got to get Chris on there soon, but
Yeah.
she rocks. She's super super nice. She has really cool stuff. So yeah, we're trying to do a meeting with a person in Maine, a person in Alabama, a person in Utah, and a person in Arizona, and everybody's busy and has other stuff and real life and all these things. So but we've been making a lot of progress, and the Bird Brains box will be coming soon. And I don't know if we should give away. We're going to do an unboxing video, so we shouldn't give away what's in it yet. But
Right.
the way it works is it's a monthly subscription that you pay, and then they'll send you every month a box with different stuff. Everything from like supplements to some of the more important like base medications.
Nesting
Nest
materials,
nesting
toys,
material,
nutrition products. Yeah, it's
and then they're going to
all.
have add-ons too
Mhm.
that if you need nest boxes, you can add nest boxes at a good price, things like that. uh, I think we're going to have a potentially a different discount code for that as well that might be even a little
Yeah.
bit more. um, but I'm excited. I've never had a branded product before. That's pretty cool.
Well, and the cool thing is, Jay, is New Zealand and Brandon, who we're working with, big shout out to him and his crew. They're really trying to focus this around the different types of finch species that not only Jay and I own, but most of you that are watching these podcasts own as well, so that this Bird Brains box really has value and can bring some valuable items to you and your birds. And it's not just because sometimes you go to the dollar store or you run to the grocery store and you come back with things that you don't really need and you're like, oh man, why did I get that? The Bird Brains box will be useful, valuable items that really pertain to that species of birds. And you guys have options of what you can choose that would go into those boxes as well. So we've been working really closely with them to get different products in stock, so you can get them in the Bird Brains box or even outside of that if needed individually. But so it's going to be pretty awesome that it's tailored so closely to these species of finches and some of your smaller hookbills. I think it's going to be an awesome box. I'm really
I mean,
excited for it.
yeah, no, I mean, I'll tell everybody what we did. I mean, we literally made a list of everything we routinely use.
Yeah.
for finches. Literally, I mean, the list is like 3 pages, and we've been sourcing all that stuff, finding it, and it'll all be. I really think for the first time, there's no, even in the finch specific websites, there's no one-stop shop that you
Right.
can get everything you need anywhere in the world, I don't think. And so, I mean, I've spent an embarrassing amount of time on the internet trying to find all this stuff. So for the first time ever, you'll be able to go to one website, get everything you want, or do the Perch Box, which is, there's going to be some Bird Brains merch in some of them. I mean,
Yeah.
stickers, all kinds of cool stuff that gets you what you need, and you don't have to go, where do I get this, or how do I get this? And when people ask me for help, I don't have to send them 6 different links for 6 different things. I can say, look, go here, go to Perchville on New Zealand's website. You'll get everything you need, and it'll be awesome. So yeah, I'm absolutely stoked. And then we're going to get to do an unboxing video, which, super common on YouTube, but I've never done
Dude,
one.
it's gonna be so cool. Like both of us at the same time. And, I think I'm really excited for that, Jay. Both of us at the same time being able to open up the boxes and really highlight, promote it. I know also leading into another item that we were looking to do as well, Jay, is maybe doing a live stream down the road on our podcast.
Mhm.
So we'd love to hear you guys' thoughts and comments around that. Should we do a live stream? What would you like it to be about? We'd have to choose a day that's earlier, right? So most of the people aren't in bed. Usually when we're filming these podcasts, it's bedtime for us. So usually in the United States, it's dark. So we'll have to
Mhm.
figure out a great day and time to do that. But would love your guys' opinions and feedback on that. Drop them down in the comments of if you'd like us to do a live stream with the group and what you'd like that to entail.
Yeah, and I mean, we have a couple dates we're kind of kicking around. We haven't gotten that far yet, but what we're I think we're going to try to do around right after like on either like a Friday or Saturday, somewhere in there, either right after lunchtime on the East Coast, so that gets you kind of into the mid morning out to the West Coast, and then
Yeah.
for the people in like Australia or Europe, it'll be early the next morning or late that night for you. So we're trying to maximize it so we can get the most people in there.
Yeah.
And if only 8 people join, only 8 people join it, and we'll have fun,
Yeah.
right? But we'll be able to. In my mind, at least my plan would be for me to be in my aviary.
Yep. Same.
Um, yeah, and so might be a cool opportunity for people to say, "Hey, explain that. What is that behind you? Explain that better," kind of a thing. And I think that's probably the one thing we're missing out on by filming at this time of night is the actual birds themselves, right?
Yeah.
So, um, not possible for us to do all the time, but we'd like to do maybe a couple a year. And
Yeah. They'd be awesome.
yeah. All right. Getting birds out of breeding condition. So the the first step to that is ending breeding. So what's your removal of nest box method? How do you decide when to pull
Um, so usually before I pull any of the nest boxes, for me in my geographical location, the big trigger is temperature change. It'll start to cool off. So we get through, August is our hottest month of the summer. And sometimes when it's too hot, it has an opposite effect and it kind of kicks your birds out of breeding. And then in September, it kind of gets right back into that sweet spot. And then you get birds that are wanting to breed again. But then by the time you get to October, your temperatures start to decrease quite a bit. Right now we're only hitting on a hot day mid 80s. But we're averaging probably low 80s right now, and then low 50s in the evening. So it's considerably cooler, and the birds feel that and sense that. So majority of my birds, you already can see they start to slow down. Their activity slows down. They're not eating as much. They're not as interested in the egg food. And so that's my first sign. And then I will slowly start going through and I'll be looking at my nest boxes that have not been utilized in the last month. And I'll pull those ones first. So I'm slowly condensing or taking down the nest boxes. And then out in my aviary, I've removed all of the nest boxes, made sure there's no birds actively sitting on eggs or chicks in the nest, and I've removed them. And then I have one nest box left out there. I've got a clutch of zebra finches. They should be fledging this next week. As soon as they fledge, I'll pull that down. Usually my zebra finches, they'll breed until I pull the nest box, and so I have to kind of play that right and catch them in between chicks fledging before they want to lay again, and then I pull their nest box down and and slowly get rid of the nest boxes, and that helps most of my species kind of take that next step down of like, okay, like I'm done. I'm not seeing nest boxes. I'm not checking in them out. I'm not trying to like stay interested in breeding. It really helps kind of flip that switch a little bit of like, oh wow, like temperatures are cooler and I'm not seeing a place that is ideal for me to lay eggs, and it kind of helps kind of kick that switch off, I guess, per se, for breeding. So that's kind of what I do. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, very similar. I'd say the two things. So temperature's a big one. Obviously, I'm in a little bit warmer climate than you. So like right now, like tonight, we're gonna get down to 70 for most of this week. But towards the end of this week and of the weekend, we're gonna get down into the 50s. So that's and I'm still breeding, but I'm on my last clutches. So I'm just a little
Yeah.
bit behind you. And I have stopped. Like I pulled my Bork nest box already. I started to pull my cockatiel nest box, but she laid an egg on the ground last night or the night before last, and my friend who hand feeds, she really wants an albino teal, and I didn't get any this last clutch.
Mm.
I asked, and she's the one hatching out my button quail, which, by the way, up to 7 chicks now.
Nice.
Um,
Good.
so if anybody's looking for button quail, all of a sudden I now have some to sell, which not expecting that. And you know I've got a hen that's been actively sitting for a long time out in the aviary too. So I may get right here in a few days. I may get some natural hatch button quail too, which I've never
That'll
had
be
before.
awesome, man. That'll be so
Which
cool.
I'd be excited to get that too. And so the uh, that's the one big thing that'll be a little too cold this coming weekend. So what I'll do specifically, there's a Gouldian nest that has 5 chicks in it that'll be about 10 or 12 days old right when that starts to get too cold for them and the parents stop sitting at about that time. So what I'll do is I'll take one of my electric space heaters that I use in the winter and just plug it
Yep.
in and sit it right under their box so that the heat rises right there and keeps it 10 degrees warmer right in that little area. Um, but the temperature, and then the other thing is light. So
Yeah.
it naturally the days are now starting to get shorter, and so the birds. Those two things are big triggers for the birds
Yeah.
that maybe we need to stop making more birds. And the first thing I do, so I have about almost 80 nest boxes, and I only have like 40 pairs, of which, for one reason or another, only about like 32 of which are actually like breeding.
Hmm.
Um, and so the first thing I do is any nest boxes that are not I got about 10 that are just there's not a nest in them. They're not being utilized. I'll pull those first because those are the
Yep.
easiest ones. I know
Yep.
nobody's using them. Out they come, and then I'll usually toss the net. If they've been pooped on a lot of, they're nasty. I don't think I can get them clean.
Yep.
Toss them, and then clean the ones I want to keep, and just put them away in storage till next spring. And then after that, I start doing what you're doing, which is chasing right behind fledging clutches and pulling the boxes.
Yeah.
And eventually I'll get down to the last few clutches in the nest here in probably the next 3 weeks. And then I'll be done for the year as far as breeding.
Yeah. And one thing I want to highlight too, Jay, and I know this can be a sensitive subject with many. If you leave nest boxes in there, species like your zebra finches, they'll probably try and breed year round in the wintertime. My brother last year in January fled some zebra finches out in his aviary. He has no idea how they survived because it gets really cold here. That's a one-off case. Lots of times people get frustrated that we pull nest boxes as they think, they sleep in them, that's their homes. Why are you taking their homes away? And in reality, one, it helps to slow the breeding down. We want them to not breed. And you have some species, if you have a nest box in there, they will most likely try and breed year round. When it starts to get colder, your lighting starts to decrease. It changes the what happens in their bodies, and especially for your females, their chances of getting egg bound triple.
Yeah, I was gonna say egg binding
It
is a huge issue if
when
it's
you have
cold.
cold temperatures and less lighting, and they're still trying to lay eggs, egg binding is huge. And then the next big thing is your chicks getting cold and dying in the nest, triples as well, right? You have most of your species stop sitting on the chicks after a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then they're alone in the nest at night, and it really it really decreases or increases the chances of those clutches not being successful and the chicks getting cold, dying, or starving. Parents tend to toss more frequently in cooler weather. So, really, lots of times people get frustrated that we pull nest boxes and we pull their homes per se and their roosting spot. But in reality, we're trying to save them, keep better, healthier females, right? Because now we're really trying to pull that switch and say, we want you to stop laying eggs. We're going to take that nest box away, but then also saving the chicks. For me, I'm in the phase right now in Utah where any minute now we can have 80-degree weather one day and 50-degree tops midday the next day, and then our evenings are getting down to close to freezing temperatures, all within the matter of 24 to 48 hours. And that has some pretty big impacts on chicks and hens that are trying to lay eggs. And so it really is looking at the overall benefit and health of those birds, and that's the reason why we're pulling these nest boxes, to bring them out of breeding condition so that we can save them and prep them and get them ready for coming the next year.
Yeah, maybe let's explain that a little bit more. So there's kind of a year-long cycle for birds, right? So if you start in the spring, you have a workup to breeding condition. Then you have your breeding season, which both of ours are fairly similar. We kind of run March, April-ish to
Mm-hmm.
September, October-ish. And then you have what's called like the austerity period from now till kind of January-ish. Then you want a molt, which is where they shed their old feathers and replace them with new feathers.
Mm-hmm.
Birds don't keep the same feathers their whole life. They get new ones every year, sometimes multiple times, especially if they're having some issues.
Yeah.
And then that you, once they have those new feathers, that's when you're starting your ramp up to breeding again. So for the health of the bird, in the wild, that would be their normal cycle. So for the health of the bird, you don't want a hen to breed year round. They'll get depleted of calcium, they'll get depleted of fat reserves, they'll have organ issues. They will breed until they die.
Yeah.
And so for a healthy bird, you need to maintain that cycle. So that's what we're talking about when we say getting into breeding condition and coming out of breeding condition. You want to make sure that both of those events happen every year. And when people ask me like, I can't get my birds to breed, I can't get them to get synced up, that it's a connected circle, and you don't have to have. It's not necessarily that you didn't get them to breeding condition. You've also got to get them out too.
Yeah.
The whole circle has to work. It can't just be half of it. So yeah, I mean those things, pulling nest boxes, and birds are going to do silly stuff. Like you'll find it's very common for me. As soon as I pull nest boxes, I'll find like an egg in a food dish or
Yeah.
an egg on the ground, like I just talked about. The That is okay, and it's okay to just dispose of those eggs, especially the
Yeah.
first couple days. Even if they're fertile, they haven't started to develop yet. It's the right thing to do for the chick in that egg, for everything. The best thing to do is just stop breeding when you get to winter, or you'll lose birds. You just will. Um, as far as the nest thing, I did want to jump back to that. You said in the wild, the vast majority, and I'm sure somebody's going to jump in the comments, and we got one when I talked about the budgie food that I wasn't specific enough, but the the vast majority of your passerines don't use a nest if they're not actively breeding. It's a pretty simple explanation for this. It takes a lot of energy and time and capital and the bird's resources to build a nest. So they're not going to use it. They're not going to build it. They're just going to perch in a tree somewhere. They also, a lot of them migrate, a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
But my birds, unless it's breeding season, there are no nests in the aviary. They all sleep on perches. They're very happy, healthy, fine to do that.
Yeah.
So,
And and even the birds that I have when they're not breeding, 9 out of 10 times I would say society finches are an exception. That they'll
yeah.
sleep outside of the nest box, even when I
Mhm.
have it available. So, and sometimes you'll have some zebra finches that'll sleep in the nest box when they're not necessarily breeding. But most of the species, even when I have nest boxes available, will not sleep in the nest box and unless they have chicks or eggs in there or they're actively breeding and the females laying eggs, things like that. But so yeah, I mean, so really we're just trying to look at the health of the birds and to safely bring them out of breeding condition. What helps with that trigger is temperature, lighting, and then starting to take away some of those nest boxes or breeding resources because we're trying to tell them, and it's the same in the wild, right, Jay? A
Mhm.
lot of those resources deplete at the end of the year, which also helps trigger those birds out of breeding condition. There's not as much food, and we can get into that topic next, but or nesting material or enough light in the day for them to feel like they can even keep chicks alive, right? Because they can only go so long without food. And if you've got longer periods of darkness and they're not feeding throughout the night, then your chicks are not going to survive. And so there's natural factors that happen that we're just really trying to mimic to help bring them out of breeding condition as best as we can and as quick as we can, so that we can keep them on track for the next year in bringing them back into breeding condition. Because if you're off even just a month or two, it can throw a pretty big kink in your next year's success. And, in Utah, if I don't have birds synced up and ready to go early spring and they're behind 2 months, by the time they're ready, it's already getting into the really hot part of summer, which that in itself has a big impact on the birds and they don't breed as well. And so I have to look at different things there. So the timing is crucial in the entire year process of bringing them in and out of breeding condition. And so it's just trying to keep to that schedule and keep them synced as best as you can and really looking at the overall health of the birds.
Right. And so the next thing I do is I start to come off of the insects and the egg food. So,
Yeah,
like right now, they're still getting daily mealworms and daily egg food, but I've started to back down the amount of mealworms. And then the next thing I'll do is start to back down the amount of egg food. And then the next thing I'll do after a few weeks of that, once all the chicks have fledged, I'll start deleting a day out of the egg
hmm,
food. So
yep,
instead of giving them egg food 7 days a week, I'll switch down to 6 days a week. And then after a few more weeks, I'll switch down to 5 days a week. And then I'll go down to 3 days a week. And I don't mean egg food Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then off. I'll do egg food Monday, egg food Wednesday, egg food Friday, and then
yeah,
so by the end of November, I'll be done with egg food. I
yeah,
won't start egg food again until January, and I'll do it 2 days a week during the molting period, just to make sure they're getting. And I'll change my egg food diet up a little bit. I'll add some things like some kelp powder and other iodine related things for feather growth. And then I'll kind of wane that down again until about February when I'm starting to aim for breeding condition again, and then I'll ramp that up again.
yeah,
So, you said it exactly right. The timing, if you mess up the timing in one spot, you messed up the whole thing. Like I said, it's a circle. You got to stay on the track. Think of it like a NASCAR track. If you mess up in turn one, your whole lap time is messed up.
yeah.
So you've got to keep the whole cycle going. So um, a common question I get, and I know Chris, I think you've kind of changed how you're doing it this year, is for birds that are from like the southern hemisphere and stuff. Do you keep them? Which it's kind of a funny thing to say because no birds in the States are actually from Australia anymore. But do you keep those birds on southern hemisphere? So like, is January your summer for your birds, or do you sync up to where you are in Utah?
I've done it both ways because I
Mhm.
do keep my shed heated and I can control my lighting inside my shed. And so some of my Australian species, like my Goulian finches, I have had some really good success breeding them in the middle of winter. The issue that I run into is it throws off my canaries and throws off my parrot finches, which are basically opposite. Well, the parrot finches are a little bit closer to that southern hemisphere, but the canaries, it really throws off big time.
Mhm.
So this year, I'm kind of doing more of a all the bird. I'm getting all the birds on the same schedule. Winter is going to be a strict no breeding for any of my species, and then come springtime, I guess the hope and the goal is that everything will just be a madhouse, and I'm going to have to be really strategic on how I breed my birds and where I'm going to breed them because they'll all be wanting to breed better or at the same time. My Goulian finches, even when I've done breaks in the wintertime and have had them molt, uh, they still tend to come into breeding condition a little bit later in the year, which is funny because that still kind of syncs up a little bit more with the Australian hemisphere. It's kind of interesting. So, like right now is when these last 2 months is when my Goulian finches have really picked up their breeding and have been more active in that realm. And so they're actually, I still have a couple of Goulian finches on nests inside my shed. And so I haven't turned my lights down all the way. And I'm still providing egg food every day because I have Goulian finches and star finches that have several active nests going on right now, but they're all inside in individual breeding cages inside my shed where I can control those settings a little bit more. And all the rest of my birds that are out in that big aviary that are out in the sun and out in the cooler temps, they are already starting to come out of breeding condition. Some of my canaries are already starting to molt. Some of my scarlet breasted parakeets are already starting to molt. So it's hitting them pretty quick. So I'll have to be strategic and smooth these next month. As soon as my star babies are weaned and my Goulian chicks are weaned, I'm going to have to kind of catch up the inside of my shed a little bit quicker with the rest of the birds so that hopefully we can have them in sync throughout the winter and molting and all on the same page.
Yeah, and so I didn't, as a matter of fact, do any individual cage breeding this year except for my bad Borks, but they're individual cage all the time. So I have everybody, like you said, I have the madhouse. I have everybody synced up, and I'll say people have asked me about this. It's possible, especially if you're within a few weeks, like you're talking about, it's possible to shorten the distance, right?
Hmm.
And get everybody synced up, but it is harder.
Yeah.
So my advice for most people would be instead of trying to do a 9 month cycle, it's easier to do a 24-month cycle. So
Yeah.
you losing a year of breeding we talked about in the past for birds that can only breed for 3 years is really tough. If you get really young birds, it's easier to you can use that first year where they're not really ready to breed anyway to do this. But I try to get basically everybody lined up over time. So
Yeah.
the best advice, if I had to give anybody, I'm going to do my video just this week is going to be about taking it slow, patience.
Yeah.
The best advice I can give you is take your time. It's better to take longer and do it right than it is to try to rush and make it work. So if your birds are kind of all out of sync, start them. Probably the best place to start them is the out of breeding condition thing because it's easier. It is easier to get a bird out of breeding condition
Yeah.
than it is to get them in, and it's just as important. So get everybody synced up, get them on the track, and then by the time you get to breeding condition the next year, hopefully you have everybody synced up. And especially, I'm a believer in syncing it up to where you are because I just think it's a little less
Yeah.
subconsciously confusing for the birds. So especially if you have them near a window. I mean, if you have them in a windowless room, it doesn't really matter. But that natural light, the temperature change and stuff, even if you think, oh, I've got it all isolated and perfect, they can tell. So I mean, even you as a human, you get more tired in the winter. You go to
Yeah.
work when it's still dark out, all those things. So I really, especially if you're outdoor bird keeping like I am, I don't think it would be possible for me to super reverse it with the amount of windows and stuff that I have.
No.
So, so I think the right way to do it is to match it up with whatever hemisphere you're in, even if it takes your birds a full year to get on that track,
Yeah.
that it's the best way to do it.
And I kind of look at it too, Jay, when if you're planning a garden, you look at what zone your state is in, what weather zone and type you're in, and that's when you're going to plant your vegetables or your garden depending on what zone you're in, and that gives you the different months of when you should be planting. I'd probably say the same thing with your birds, right? Uh, I will go into winter prep a little bit earlier than you will, just because it gets colder here quicker than it
Hmm.
does down in that southeastern geography region of the United States. And I would say all the states north, most of your northern United States, Canadian states, you're gonna go into winter a lot faster, and your birds will probably be more in sync with mine. And you're looking at end of September of when we're saying, okay, we're done with breeding, and we have almost just as much darkness as we have lights, et cetera, things like that are really going to impact your birds. So, like you said, Jay, prep your birds according to your geographical location and your weather patterns and what makes sense. That may mean that you're going to be a month ahead of Jay and I, or a month behind in that process, but just depending on where you're at, what your weather temperatures look like, your lighting schedules, etc. And that'll play a factor and a role in that.
Yeah, and if you're in Australia or Argentina, you're going to be the opposite,
You're
right?
going into breeding condition right now, yeah.
Right. And I'm jealous because that's fun.
I know.
But yeah, the so take it slow. Make sure you're doing the whole cycle for your birds. I think that's for the ultimate breeding success. I'm already thinking this year now at the end of this breeding season, I'm already lining up for next
Mhm.
breeding season. So it's a 12-month game. It's not a 3-month game. It's not a 1 week game. It's the long game. Play checkers or play chess, not checkers.
Right.
Hmm.
So
All right.
I'd say, in closing, Jay, temperature, lighting, and food. Those are your top three items that you need to to look at, and those are key factors of what's going to bring your birds out of breeding condition, and then what's going to bring them back in
Right.
later in
They're all
breeding.
going down when you're coming out and they're going up when you're coming in.
Yep.
It all makes sense. All
Yep.
right, Chris, if they had a question about this, where could they find you?
Yeah, reach out to me. All things Bird Nerd. YouTube and Facebook is Bird Nerd. Instagram is Bird Nerd 4. Reach out. Love to hear your comments. Love to touch base with you and get back to you, and look forward to them. So, how about you, Jay? How can they get a hold of you?
I am the Javiary, Jayviary, or the underscore Javiary. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, obviously. I'm on Reddit and I'm on Threads, which sucks. The best places to get me, Instagram or Facebook, will be the fastest response. Um, we want to help. If you can't find one of us, the other one will find you. We both still have some birds left. So if you're looking for
Yes,
birds, reach out now because Chris's window is like this tiny and mine's
I've
right
only got
behind
a
him.
few weeks left, and I'm out till next
Yep.
year.
So give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and thanks to New Zealand for sponsoring. And we'll catch
Yes,
you all in the next one.
appreciate you guys. We'll see you.